Welcome to Feed Your Lion. I'm Dr. L.I.O.N, and I'm here to aid you in the mastery of total health, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and financial. So prepare to have your wellness tank filled up with this podcast. Welcome to another episode of Feed Your Lion podcast. Today's special guest is Mr. Derik Taylor. He is an attorney with Elder Law of Eastern Kentucky, and he's going to do some edumacating tonight for us of all things, not all things, but some things to prepare for when it's getting close to that time of you passing over the rainbow, or what do they say? Over what's the whatever, I'm making that up.
We know what you mean.
We'll just stop there, but you guys get it. So Derik, welcome. Thanks for coming. Tell us a little bit, first of all, about your background, how you got into law, like why you chose, this specific part of law.
Zach, what should I do with my hands? Will Ferrell reference. Yeah. Okay. So I'm from South Point. Got married, had kids. My daughter had just been born. I started at OU Southern, and kind of kept changing majors until I had a useless degree that I could do nothing with.
Yeah.
Got a job at the Herald-Dispatch. Did that for 7 years. It was a district sales manager. It's like you're over routes, and you try to talk people into having a paper subscription. So that was
really.
So my area was all Lawrence County up to Gallipolis and up to Wheelersburg, Portsmouth.
Do they still have that, or is it like everything online now?
The paper?
Like, no, I mean like where like you have to like go like try to get subscriptions, or is it all like online based now?
I think
I don't even
probably
know.
They've given up by now.
So I was wondering. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the side note. But.
So I did that for 7 years. I don't know how far you wanted to go back.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good.
So got divorced, and then from there, newspapers never paid well.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for me. So I needed to find a new career, and my buddy was in law school at the time. And so I was in my early 30s. And he was in law school at the time. So we were both, like, he was on the older end, and then I was going to be on the much older end. And with his encouragement, I guess, having somebody that's going through it, that's why I started going to law school. Started at Cincinnati. Got it, went through all that mess, LSAT and all that.
Yeah.
And everything was fine, and got accepted to a few schools, and Cincinnati was where I wanted to go. But yeah.
Did you know we're fellow UC graduates? I think
I saw one.
I did my MBA
diplomas.
there at yeah.
I think that was soon after I joined BNI. I feel like that was mentioned.
Yeah.
But then I was too intimidated to come up and talk to you about that back then.
What? Am I intimidating? Okay.
Well, maybe.
Good to know.
Maybe. She's so doing so much stuff. It's like,
let's
am I
add
bothering
this
this
to
lady?
another list of things that are not good, Derik. I don't like Will Ferrell.
Two things. Okay.
3 things. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Moving on.
I forgot the big one.
Okay. Anyways.
Oh, I don't know where I ended it, but we'll skip past that. Ended up at UK Law. Through that time of law school, I was interested in property law. Like property class, a lot of people hated it. For some reason, I loved it.
Yeah.
And it's mostly dealing with deeds and property rights and things. I was like, all right, I like this. Then I took Will's class, and I liked that. And then took advanced estate planning and liked that. That's where I was introduced to elder law.
Okay.
But also took property things because like land use, zoning rules, I was kind of interested in both of those. So I was like, all right, I have 2 career options.
Do you still do any of that, or are you just elder law now?
All I did was take classes.
Gotcha.
So I've never practiced
You never
anything.
practiced it. Okay.
So elder law, met an elder law attorney because he came in and spoke in one of our class periods like this. This is neat. I like this better than regular estate planning, which seemed to be geared towards like multimillionaires and estate tax avoidance and things. It was helping people with middle class. People maybe they have a house and they have $50,000. Well, let's try to save that. I mean, is there something that they could do?
Like a noble or like pursuit kind of thing.
And it felt more in tune with my, I don't know, my demeanor, working class.
Yeah.
Like
your values.
Yeah. It felt like, I feel like I like this. Yeah. So I clerked for a judge after law school, but was still interested and tried to network with elder law attorneys, and then eventually got got a job at elder law firm, and bing, bang, boom. We'll just skip over that. Ended up here, ended up back home.
Yeah.
And had started my own January last year.
So for like people that don't know, like when you decide on, okay, I'm going to practice this type of law versus this, like, do you always have to do kind of like an internship under like in a practice that does that? Like, how does that work so you get your practical experience like after
Right.
you passed your bar and all that?
I think it would come down, you could take classes that maybe prepare you a little tiny bit, but most of the time, it doesn't. You have to get a job and have like a mentor, I guess
Okay.
you would have. You'd have to have that. I mean, there's plenty of people that probably go out and start on their own,
Yeah.
but I think that's pretty uncommon. But there are some that do.
So it's not like required, like it's like for me, like, you know, you have to do a residency before you do special. So it's not like required that you do that, but would you say the bulk of lawyers like go under somebody who has more experience or
It
no?
depends on how like gutsy they are.
Okay.
But I could, get a loan, get a bunch of billboards and say I do personal injury. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to do anything extra. At this point, it's just I'm licensed to practice in Kentucky. I could do that. I could do
So
other things.
you-
I would probably get disbarred because I would be so terrible at it.
So you could technically do any like type of law you wanted.
Right.
Like
right.
you don't have to like pick I mean, it seems like everybody has a kind of specialty area, but you could really, once you pass the bar, you can go out and do anything you want. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I guess you just got to. It seems like through my experience, a lot of friends that I was close to, they knew where they were going to work. Mm-hmm. And like a friend of mine, he does like class action. A friend of mine, she does. She wanted to be a prosecutor, so she's a prosecutor.
yeah,
So, yeah.
that's good. So do you see a lot of lawyers? This is completely off subject because we're going to get back to elder law, but now I'm just down the rabbit hole a little bit. So do you see a lot of lawyers getting in trouble because they're trying to like practice outside their scope, so to speak, or is that not really a thing as much?
I mean, personally, I don't
Yeah,
have a lot of
see,
interaction. I'm
yeah.
kind of like in my little lane.
You're in your bubble, in your lane.
Yeah, I don't care what anyone else is doing. I'm just, yeah.
I gotcha. Okay.
But
All right. So you worked for a while with somebody else, and now you started what's been some of your challenges opening up your own practice and things like that?
I mean, the first few months was like the uncertainty of, is anyone going to call? That kind of worked out well. I was getting calls kind of like right off the bat.
Okay.
And so, but then things did dip. And then through May of last year, things picked up and it's been pretty steady
Yeah.
since then. But starting out, it was, it feels lame writing your website and your bio and things like that. And I'm working for my firm. And then I'm writing in the third person. I don't know.
Yeah.
But little things like that, to try to like.
So did you do all your own stuff? Like you did your own website and all that? Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah. I got one compliment on the website before, so.
Yeah, that's
one.
That's okay. What is the website, just in case I forget later?
elderlaweky.com.
elderlaweky.com. Okay, just in case. All right, so let's go into like specifically, like your solo practice, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have any partners. Is that something you want to change? Like, what's that like compared to?
No, it's great. There's a book called The Company of One. And I've started reading it, and it was or someone I met suggested a few books, and that was one of them. I'm reading it, and it's just like so many of the things are what I want to do anyways, or what I have been doing anyways. So that's kind of where I'm at.
What kind of things?
Not taking on more just for the sake of more money or more clients. Pushing, the way I've been doing is pushing things out. Like if I'm busy and I'm already at capacity, I'm, push someone out a couple weeks. And I hate to do that, but I'd rather take care of who I have now.
Yeah.
Instead of taking on more and more and more, and then things start falling through the cracks. So I answer all my own calls. I set my own appointments. Print things. If I'm in a meeting, I got to make a copy. I got to get up and go make a copy. And that's been great. I wouldn't want it at this point. I wouldn't want it any other way.
So you wouldn't want like a clerk or anything to just like help out with the office stuff?
No, I feel like it would take so long to get them to where they would be useful that
Gotcha.
yeah. So no,
I
just
gotcha. Okay.
and that's what I like. That's what I liked about the book and other
Yeah.
people that have done it. Just kept it small and do what they like and don't get caught up in trying to scale and
Yeah.
do things like that. And I don't know.
Well, I think that's interesting because I feel like so many times in business, like everybody's like, "Oh, how do I make this bigger? How do I make this scalable?" And that's all good. Like, but like some people like are just they like this like keeping it at a certain like level, and that's what they like doing. It's what they're comfortable with, and it's what like makes sense for their lifestyle. And I think that's really a good point because not everybody's going to be like wanting, a mega corporation or like multiple businesses. That's not for everybody. And I've talked to several business owners who's like, yeah, I scaled up to several locations and it was just like, I didn't enjoy it. Like I scaled it back down, so I think there's something to be said for like knowing yourself and knowing what you like and what you want out of your business. So I think that's a good point. But so moving on to like you work a lot with like Medicaid issues and then like planning, like right, like for death or like avoiding probate, that kind of stuff. So let's talk about like some of the specific cases you see or like repeatedly like and things
Okay.
people can avoid that don't know anything about this because there's a lot of people I feel like who are completely uneducated in this. So
Yeah, help keep me on task on this one.
Okay.
But I would say like there's two sides of what I do.
Okay.
The Medicaid side is to me, it's definitely the more challenging, the more specialized, and then the estate planning side, which hopes to avoid the problems that the Medicaid people are
Sure.
facing. So on the Medicaid side, and again, this is a lot of my cases, they come to me to get Medicaid, I guess, if we want to get in the weeds of that.
Yes.
Someone's in the nursing home. We'll do a husband and wife.
Okay.
It's different for single, so we'll just do a husband and wife. To me, and this is not legal advice or anything, but
Yeah.
there are protections out there for things that maybe you could utilize. Protections for the spouse,
Yeah.
who's still at home. Usually the wife is still at home. There's things that we can do to help protect their assets and things for her. If there's a disabled child, a child who's maybe been living there, there's things that you want to look at for each Medicaid case. And income is a small part of it, but if they're over income, they need what's called a qualified income trust, then everyone's going to fall asleep with that. But so that's what I would look at for a Medicaid case is where they're at, like how their assets are. And
So okay, so with Medicaid though, to like qualify, they have to like get rid of so much stuff typically, right? Is that like the problem with it a lot of times? Like
Yeah.
in the nursing home, like they can't have all these extra assets just typically under their name to get Medicaid, right?
Right. If we want to make it easy, we'll say a single person.
Okay.
So a single person, the asset limit's $2,000.
Okay.
So you could have a case that's as simple as, he owns his house, which is excluded, asterisks, to all this, it's excluded for up to 6 months, maybe more, but that's not necessarily protected. It just means that you could get Medicaid and still own your house.
But only for 6 months?
There's things you would do
To protect your house?
Well, not necessarily protect it.
Okay.
So here's the problem.
Okay.
You just say a typical case. I don't know if this will help, but here's a typical thing most people do.
Okay.
Mom goes in the nursing home. Mm-hmm. Mom owns her house. She had $50,000. They bought a funeral. They paid the nursing home $7,000 a month for 3 months, something like that, and then all the money's gone.
Yeah.
And they apply for Medicaid. Mom's on Medicaid for 2 or 3 years. That's if it's 7,000, $170,000 that Medicaid may have paid for her care, depending on her income. Mom passes away, kids sell her house, or they open probate because they would have to because she owned the house. Medicaid will collect against the house
For what they've paid
for what
out.
Medicaid paid. Yeah, it's a Medicaid estate recovery. So
Excuse me.
you know,
So if they put that in like a trust, though,
okay. So that's so that's the typical how things play out. Now rewind.
okay,
If it had been, because she was in the nursing home a couple years, if it had been 7 years ago or more than 7 years ago, if she had moved the house and the money to an irrevocable trust and then applied for Medicaid 5 years later, that Medicaid only looks back at assets and things you may have transferred within the last 5 years.
okay,
So if you're able to move that to the trust, an irrevocable trust, and it has to say all the right things. It can't
Sure.
just be an irrevocable trust and you're good. It has to say a lot of things. If that's moved over, then you're good. What people usually have heard of this whenever they transfer the house to the kids, and that's that it has the same effect for Medicaid reasons, from my understanding, as doing the trust. However, your kid owns your house. Your kid gets divorced, your kid gets sued, you and your kid have a falling out, they own your house. So in the trust, the trust has certain provisions in there for you.
So what's the difference? So if they just transferred the house to their kids without any kind of trust, just like right out, you're saying like the bad thing is they own your house. Like with the trust, you have to like pass away first, or like, it has to follow the process. But if you're just transferring it over and you've got a crap kid,
There we go.
crap kid.
Inside joke.
Yeah, we have an inside joke with crap kid. But so you have a crap kid though, and they own your house now flat out, and you have no like recourse with that. But it's not there. The Medicaid doesn't come back on that if it's completely transferred to the kid without any. It doesn't matter the time on that, right? Like, does it still have to be 5 years? So
For any transfer, anything you gave away, if you paid your grandkids tuition 4 years ago and you need the nursing home, you gave away however much money, $20,000 for that grandkid's tuition. That's a gift. That's a problem for Medicaid. So that's,
So you really have to do these things 5 years before you think you're gonna.
yeah, definitely.
So is there any way around that 5 year thing?
Okay, so the 5 year thing is only about what you transferred away for less than fair market value.
Okay.
You sold your house to your kid for $1.
Okay.
It's $100,000 house. You got $1 for it. That's a $999,000
Gotcha.
gift. You a large present to a kid or a grandkid or something like that. That's a gift. So yeah, if you did that in the preceding 5 years, it has to be disclosed or it's fraud, and it's Medicaid can, I guess, request bank statements back 5 years to comb through them and look at that. But yeah, so that's what they're looking for is gifts, and
Okay.
within the last 5 years.
Okay. And with the trust though, the 5 years that.
The 5 years, and this is a thing that attorneys tell people sometimes, that if you transfer it to a Medicaid trust, it's protected. As nice as that would be to say, and do, it's not. It's the transfer to the trust is the same as just giving it away, because you transferred it out of your name. It's the same. It's the same effect, and it's the same. Medicaid views it the same way.
So if you do that and you die a couple years later, Medicaid, even under the trust, can come get that.
No, so they
Okay.
never come get it.
Okay.
So what happens is whatever you gave away, that dollar amount creates a penalty. So your parents gave you their house, and then dad needs Medicaid. This is 2 years later, everything's done right. They say we gave away a $100,000 house to our daughter 2 years ago. Well, Medicaid's going to give them a penalty of at least a year. We could do the math real quick, but just say it's a year. So the pressure's on you. What you should do is give it back, so then it takes the penalty away. So the penalty can be fixed with a return of either, if it's money, if you give some of it back, you're good. If you give all of it back, the penalty goes away. So that's what we have to work with.
The client, or their kid that they gave it
Their
to.
kid, their kid owns it, so their kid would have to. A case I dealt with, they didn't hire. Grandma the POA was the granddaughter. She probably did some things she shouldn't have. It wasn't 100,000, but it was quite a bit. And she had spent a lot of it. It wasn't going to give it back to grandma, and grandma needed Medicaid. So there's exceptions and there's things you could try to do. Medicaid's pretty by the book on that. If you give something away and you didn't, for less than fair market value, you're probably going to get a penalty for that, and it's going to be hard to overcome that.
And what's the penalty typically?
So it depends on the amount may have changed. I remember it took them years to update this, but they take the value of what was given away and you divide it by $270.16, which is the average cost of care across Kentucky.
So let's do that. So let's say it's $100,000.
Divided by, yep.
Divided by what?
270.16.
Okay, that's 370.
Okay, so I was close. Just over a year then. That
you have to pay it back, you mean?
Well, in this scenario, the parent wouldn't get Medicaid for 370 days.
Oh, okay.
So,
I see. So the penalty is they don't get
Medicaid.
They don't get Medicaid.
So the house can stay in the kid's name, the money can stay in the kid's name, and the kid can just let mom
suffer.
Stay in the nursing home, get kicked out. I mean, there's rules on them just kicking people out.
Yeah, what do they do with that? What if the person is incapable of caring for themselves and yet they can't get the funds? What do they do in that point? You probably have seen that, right? Or no?
What would they do? Yeah, I guess they would eventually try to evict them, try to move them to a different facility. I'm not sure. We'd have to talk to an administrator of a nursing home what they do, but I'm sure they've come across this because this isn't uncommon.
Yeah, man, that sounds rough. So it's almost better to be
proactive.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any kids and you didn't have any money anyways, Medicaid would kick in, right? Is there who do they deny, I guess? Is it do you see a lot of denials if it's not a money issue like that?
Yeah, it would just that's all they really care about.
Yeah. So if they don't have the money.
Yeah, if it's somebody, a single person, they make $1,000 a month in Social Security, they have $1,000 in the bank, they should just be able to apply and everything's fine. I would never ever have a case like that. That would be too easy. Thank you. That would be great. Please, come to me with the easy ones. But usually it's people with multiple properties or out-of-state property or gifts. Gifts are crazy common. Bad contracts that they've done.
So how do they know when they're supposed to start playing? Because nobody knows when they're going to get really sick and need you could have some kind of crazy accident and stuff. So just putting it in a trust way ahead of time, you can do that, right? That's probably the best way is just to make sure that it's done early, right? Or what do you suggest with that? Is there a time frame?
As you know, I'm sure you see people's health. You have someone who might be 80 and be healthier than a 50-year-old.
Yeah.
So I consider that. Consider your own health would probably be. I never thought of that before.
Yeah.
What age? Because there's no age. Because I have people in their 60s that.
Do you have anybody? Do you have anybody younger though who's okay, say I'm getting ready to turn 40. Would you recommend anybody who owns property just do that early, or what do you recommend with that?
Okay, so now we're bordering on. So we've been focused on Medicaid.
Yeah.
And I think
if
you should be worried about Medicaid.
Yeah.
My view, and people might disagree with me, but it should be your income.
Yeah.
If you make enough money and you're going to make enough money in retirement. To pay if you're making $8,000, $9,000 a month.
You can pay for it yourself. You don't need anything.
Right. You wouldn't qualify because you make too much.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be crazy. So I wouldn't worry about that. I would say you'd probably want to worry about just a will or a living trust, also a revocable trust is what they're called. And that's that would border on estate planning.
I have a estate plan. You want to know what it is?
Don't die.
Well, we all are going to do that. Zach's telling me not to fiddle with my mic. It's a hand thing. I want to do it. No, but I would go live on the cruise ships. That's what I would do.
That's your retirement plans.
That's my Well, like instead of a nursing home, you've got round the clock medical care. You can go meet all kinds of new people. They do your laundry. You get food all the time. It's like you don't have to cook anything. That would be. I've seen a bunch of people that do it. I would totally do that. I'd just take off one, and it's cheaper than the nursing homes. It is.
I know. It sounds fun. I've visited a lot of clients and people in nursing homes, and there's care that the nursing home is going to provide the cruise ship.
Well, if you're relatively, I should say, if you can mobile.
How about if it's assisted living?
Yeah.
Instead of assisted living cruise ship.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. Sorry, that was really off subject, but
yeah,
I found it relevant to mention.
No, I've seen some articles about that. So
yeah, that's my plan. I got to stay healthy enough that I can cruise in my golden years.
Okay. Some goals.
Oh, shoot. Okay, so so let's switch over then to the other, because you do a lot of estate planning too, right?
Yeah. I'd say like it's 50-50 a lot of
Okay.
times. Sometimes it fluctuates, but estate planning would be, I mean, this has happened where did the planning for, mom was in the nursing home, and then that got them thinking, wow, if she had done this, things would be a lot easier instead of, because, you have people that have been privately paying for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, if they'd done something 5 years ago, that would have been better. But so that's on a lot of people, like existing clients, like I'm working with the kids, and the kids are thinking, all right, we're retirement age, let's go ahead and do everything so our kids don't have to deal with what we're dealing with.
If you are like a single person and you don't have a lot of ties or anything, do you really need to worry about that? Is it something that...
Well, if you have a dog...
Just ignore it.
And you want to...
If you want to leave something to...
No, that's the thing. It's a pet trust. So,
is there a pet trust?
yeah,
Are you
absolutely.
serious?
Yeah. So you want to leave funds and appoint somebody to take care, or wherever the dog is going to be, or other pet. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I definitely will need one of those.
You got to put the money
Look at
aside.
that. Look, right on cue, Luna. Go lay down. You've interrupted. We already had a ghost interruption.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think, so a lot of people, that's what's on their mind. That's why they're doing it, right? Is for their kids, and they don't want what they've worked for going somewhere else. They, would rather their kids benefit from it. But if it's someone who doesn't have kids or parents or spouse, just single person, I guess they would have to find where they want it to go, because that would be the situation.
So what happens, like, if you don't have anybody appointed? Let's talk about that first. Like a typical, somebody passes away and they have nothing in writing. What happens?
Yeah, so they would look to see if that person, are their parents still alive? It goes to their parents. Is it brothers and sisters, their kids, and it just keeps branching out. Then it would go up to your aunts and uncles, your cousins. So that's who it would go to. So that single person in your scenario, if they have, their brother is dead, their brother had a kid who's dead, and then that kid would potentially inherit.
It's literally
everything.
the next closest relative.
Yeah.
But when they do that, it has to go through like the probate court, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so they take a chunk of that money, correct?
No.
No?
No, there's no chunk. No, it's not.
They don't take anything?
There would be like an inheritance tax depending on
Okay.
how close they are as a relative. But no, there's no big chunk. I mean, there's the fee, administration fee, and things like that.
Do they avoid all that if they have it in a trust?
The trust would, so that single person, if they had a trust and they named, say they had 2 childhood friends or something, and then they're an organization they supported, or church or something, and that's who gets it. The trustee of the trust there wouldn't be court involvement. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be. It would state the terms, and then the trustee would, pass that out, figure
Okay.
everything out, administer the estate at that point, and it wouldn't go through court. Because that's a lot of people that have been through probate. It's not the end of the world. But if you can avoid it, most people.
Well, I just
agree
heard a
about
lot of
avoiding it.
stuff, and this is from not, but a lot of things about it can be kind of painful with that, but with the process.
I think it can. Dealing with the creditors and getting a creditor files a claim, and then you got to get a release from them. They don't give a release, so you can't distribute the funds, and you might have people that might maybe need the funds, and they're tied up for minimum of 6 months.
Gotcha.
And so, but there's things out there. If it's husband owned everything, is in his name, and he needs probate, the wife's going to get $30,000, so that can usually be distributed pretty early to her or him. But.
So the 6 months is just like, is that the minimum needed to like investigate everything, or is that like, what's the
Creditors.
60 days?
It's to allow creditors time to
Creditors.
know that
Okay.
you're dead and that they need to
Gotcha.
file a claim or notify the administrator or executor that, hey,
Okay.
Tom owed me this money.
Gotcha.
Or owed us money.
So the husband and wife thing. So say the husband passes away, but they didn't have anything in writing. What if like the house was in his name and stuff? What happens?
So that's kind of that's where we're going to lead to problems. So that's definitely going to require probate, and his kids now own part of the house, and especially in second marriages. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it doesn't matter if it's 2 years or if you've been married 40 years and it's your second marriage and you have kids from a prior marriage. There's no will. Those kids now own potentially half your house.
So is that what they typically do? If there's kids and a spouse, they'll do 50-50?
Well, that's just the laws of intestacy. So your kids, your spouse, your kids are, I guess, preferred, but then there's protections for the surviving spouse. And now we're getting way in the weeds of,
I know,
if we're talking about
it's-
Medicaid, I could talk
yeah.
all day, but I would probably refresh myself on all this. But
Yeah.
if married couple, husband had one kid from a prior relationship, or it doesn't matter if it's a prior relationship. Husband dies, wife would get about half. The kid would get half. So that kid now owns half the house where the wife lives, and could potentially request the property be sold.
Yeah.
Because she owns it or he owns
Yeah.
it, that kid. So. Right. So that's one of those issues, not having a will. At a
That's a big
minimum,
deal.
have a will if you are looking out for your spouse and you have kids out there. At least do a will to do, yeah.
So
get that.
with the will, is there, like, you hear all the time of people like contesting the will and stuff. So is there, in fact, I actually was talking to one of my clients, and they actually have a thing where her dad's will was altered after he died by like the new spouse, so they're in a whole big mess with that. But like, how often is like a will like contested? Is that a regular thing? Like if people like say like a kid is mad that everything was left to a second spouse and they didn't get nothing. Like I mean, do you see that quite a bit?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. It's
Yeah.
like back to my personality and what I like.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
I've never done a case like that, but
Yeah.
I've had people that's touched their life, I guess, or whatever
Yeah.
you want to say it, where they don't like how things have gone because it's not what they were told.
Yeah.
I always feel like if the will was drafted by an attorney, the person who made the will, that they were in good shape at the time.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be pretty hard to overcome
So
that will.
So unless you have something like concrete with that, you're not gonna have a high likelihood that that's gonna be like overturned, so to speak.
Well, all right, the typical example.
Mm-hmm.
Grandma's kids live away. She has caregivers,
Mm-hmm.
and grandma wants to change all the beneficiaries to the caregivers and no longer her kids.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that's pretty clear grounds of undue influence, and that she's something happened. If it's a matter of, you are benefiting your surviving spouse over your kids, I don't. That on the surface doesn't. It's not.
So there has to be
Look back.
some kind of suspicion.
No, I mean, I don't know if there has to be, but if you're looking for like levels of, hey, this is a good case to contest a will and this isn't, you would look at those things.
I feel like you could draw that out for a long time too, right? Like if
And it,
in court, like appealing it and stuff.
I talked to a guy today that was, I talked about the probate case he's involved with, and there's people fighting in that.
Yeah.
Because they didn't, and I figured it, I don't know how much I should talk about that, but like I saw it a long time ago and I was like, this is what it says. That's not what anyone thought it should be, but I was like, this is what it says. And that's, I was right. But everyone's unhappy about that. And so they're fighting about it from what I picked up.
So, I mean, I feel like that could be like dependent, very like judge dependent too and stuff. I mean, that's like, I don't know. Like, I mean, back to that caregivers thing, maybe like somebody got really close to the person that was taking care of them every day, and that their mental status could have been completely clear, and they're like, yeah, my kids don't give a crap about me, but hey, this person has taken, good care of me for years. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then to have kids who weren't in the picture at all now coming around to say, hey, that's my money. Type
Right,
of thing.
there
Like,
could be good reasons to do that.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But
yeah.
like, I'm just saying, like, devil's advocate. I guess, like, is there any sure way to be like, I want to make sure this is what happens with my money besides a will? Like, is there any other way to be like, really cement that before you die? Like that you.
I mean, if there's been undue influence, I mean, people could still come around. I mean, your kids could still come back because if it looks bad, there's probably something there, and that would be again outside of my little world.
What's your ideal like person to represent?
On, I guess, two sides. One would be on the Medicaid side. It would just be a complicated Medicaid case where there's been a gift, there's a lot of assets, or at least more than two. There's, I don't know, 30 to 100,000 or more. $200,000 of assets. That would be a good one because it's never too late, right? Because those are some of my favorite cases are. They've been privately paying. They hear about me, and they call me, and then they went from paying $80-some thousand a year to Medicaid kicking in, and now the wife's being able to protect what they've worked for, and she's in good shape. He's on Medicaid, and I've paid for the fee for me has been paid for after the first month. So those are my favorite ones because you can see the results.
Yeah.
The one, I mean, estate planning ones are great too because you build, you get to know somebody, you put their plan, what they want to happen. You put it on paper and so those are great. So
when would somebody would want to do like a trust when it's like they're still like what would be why would you do a trust instead of a will?
Okay, well, you would do an irrevocable trust, like a Medicaid asset protection trust, and that'd be also an irrevocable trust. If you're worried about Medicaid, you don't have long-term care insurance, and your income's not going to be enough, and you want to make sure what you have is there to be passed down to your kids. So that's why you probably want to put it in a trust. Because even those, like a couple $100,000, I mean, that's pretty good. You saved $100,000. You probably went without. You probably didn't go on vacation. So you didn't spend, and then that's going to be gone in 2 years, or if you're in a ventilator facility that's $1,200 a day. So there's all these things, and so that's what somebody, if they're thinking of protecting their stuff, do an irrevocable trust as you get older. If you're looking to make things easier for your kids or probably your kids, your spouse, then a revocable trust would be good too, so they don't have to deal with probate. We haven't even talked about this. I think this is one thing you want to talk about too, was like powers of attorney.
Yeah.
Get those in place. So you have someone that has the medical power to make those decisions if you're unable to, or if you're not in your right mind to do that.
Yeah.
Financial power of attorney, so they can write checks, they can take care of bills, they can keep the lights on, they can deal with your stuff. Not having those, I mean, heck, I would put that at like, I mean, I've done those for people in their 20s.
Yeah.
Because they have kids and they're like, all right, we need to get something happens. They already are worrying about that. And even though it's like elder law, right? It's not.
No,
there's still
yeah.
some. You don't have to be elderly. But yeah, so I would do like a will power of attorney. Would be husband, wife, or just a single. It wouldn't matter, but get those done, and then if you want
Early, get those done early.
Get those done, yeah. And you can even make it to where they trigger to where, all right, you're gonna have to get a doctor to say that I'm unable to manage my own affairs and I'm incapacitated or something. You're going to have to get this note from a doctor before you can use the power of attorney. So at least having that, if something happens to you, that person, your spouse, your brother, sister can do
If
that.
you don't have that, will it automatically go to, is there like a person that automatically does that?
Does what?
Like the power of attorney things. Like if you don't have that and...
Oh, if you don't have one? So if you don't have anything, it'd be similar to the will. It'd just be up to the state. And at that point, someone would need to be appointed guardian.
So if it went to the state and you have a living spouse who's has capacity, would they normally turn it over as your guardian to the?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
That's gonna be up to the judge, but I mean, I would say that they do their credit check, background check, and things. I've had people not be suitable for guardians before because of things, so they weren't able to. But then the state has people that can be guardians. Yeah, and I'm sure they're
seen
great
that
people,
a bunch
but they
in the
might
ER.
not have the time to devote to things. But with the hassle of guardianship, I mean, I would say I would rather do probate than guardianship as a like individually for someone in my life. Like I'd rather do the probate than I'd rather do the guardianship. Yeah. So I'd rather have a POA for
You'd rather
my
have
mom than do a guardianship for my mom.
Yeah.
Or you know what I'm saying.
Well, it's funny you talked about. I just had this conversation yesterday. My grandpa has a cancer. It's pretty aggressive, and he did not know there was a difference between a medical power of attorney. Because I was like, who's doing all that? Because his oldest, my uncle, is a nurse and well versed in a lot of that stuff. But he's like, well, he's our power of attorney. I was like, yeah, but is he like for financial stuff or is he like your health care? And he's like, oh, I didn't know there was a difference. I'd want your grandma to make all the decisions until, whatever. Mm-hmm. So, but he had no idea about any of that. And I mean, he's like going through the stuff actively and he's still, he's appointed most of that to Tim if they're incapacitated, but still it's, he's going through this actively and still didn't know. So I feel like there's a lot of like miscommunications out there. I think sometimes people don't want to talk about these issues because it's uncomfortable, but still like you want to have the discussions now versus when, you're a hot mess and you can't take care of yourself or something happens and,
Right, because there's a limit to when you can do it.
Yeah.
I've been in meetings where I knew that you don't have to be 100%. Yeah. There's a point where you could just tell someone can't
make the
decision.
They
don't know. They don't understand enough to be able to do this. Yeah. So then you're too late. And then you're right. People just I have a power of attorney, but yeah. A lot of just power, whenever they say power of attorney, usually they're probably talking about financial. Yes. And so there might not be anything in there about medical records or firing doctors, medical personnel, things like that. Yeah. So, and that whenever I was talking about POA, I was kind of talking about both, like medical and financial. I just have them one of each.
Have you seen that movie I Care a Lot?
I think I may have started
it was kind of about these issues, but she was like taking advantage of all these older people and like getting like control of all their assets and like ridiculous like fees and stuff. But like, have you ever seen anything like that in real life? Like people like like using the guardianship thing, I guess. As
maybe not using I've seen people using like getting a new will. Yeah. And
See, that's terrible. Like taking advantage.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so I want to like kind of summarize because we've talked about like a lot of important things. So like for younger people, the things to be thinking of still even early is power of attorneys for both like financial and for healthcare in case something happened, and also maybe a will if you have kids and stuff to go ahead and get those things.
We didn't even talk about, if you have kids, who's going to be the guardian?
Yeah.
That's some of the younger people that I've worked with they're going on a vacation, husband and wife going on vacation. They have a 2-year-old. What happens if they die? They, because maybe the grandparents are going to fight about it.
Yeah.
And so they want to make sure they say who's that person going to be. So yeah, they need to have that done. And there's one more thing.
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of my favorite shows is Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Okay.
The final season, I was waiting for my son to get back from college to watch it. So we were watching it together. And then one of the last episodes we watched. So if you've seen the show.
I haven't.
Okay. So
you have to fill
Jeff
me
and
in.
Susie, they've been married this series. They've always been married.
Okay.
He's about to go in for surgery, and he's talking to Larry. There's a 3% chance that I might end up in a coma or I might die. And I know that she will pull the plug on me immediately. So he gets Larry David. He's the co-creator of Seinfeld for that, that kind of humor. So he takes Larry to his attorney to do an updated medical power of attorney. They get found out later by Susie, and it's all undone. But right, you got to have that in place. Who's going to make that decision? Yeah. And because it's a hard decision to make, to say let's take him off the machines.
Sure.
But so it's a hard thing to think about who you're going to pick, but ultimately that helps your family. I mean, doing the trust, if you have everything, that makes things so much easier than having nothing.
Absolutely.
And they, you would thank them for it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then as you get older, if you are worried about needing like Medicaid or any of that stuff, like, you're not going to have, what is that income level cutoff, by the way? We didn't say that.
Changes every year.
Yeah, what is it like?
Well, so it's not necessarily an income. For Medicaid long-term care, all it means is you have to do a qualified income trust.
Okay.
So this year it's $2,829. So you make over that, you have to, if it's a few dollars over, you have to do a qualified income trust. And if you're under, you don't. So that's the income side.
Okay.
Pretty easy.
So if you're older and you're worried about the Medicaid, you should do the irrevocable trust. So that like protects after 5 years. Then like if you've done the 5 year, they're not going to come back and try to claim anything in there, basically. Yes.
Work with an elder law attorney, but yes. I mean, because I had someone come in, they had an irrevocable. We did all of this already with mom and dad. I'm looking at it, just like, well, yeah, it's an irrevocable trust, but it says that principal and income in the trust can be used for their care. Mm-hmm. So if it can be used for their care, use it for their care, and then whenever it's all gone, maybe Medicaid will talk to you. So, so it has to
have all those things.
Yeah. I mean, doing even just a free POA online, right? You can do that, but doing kind of like off the cuff, he's our family attorney. We're going to do the trust with him. Mm-hmm. In the Medicaid world, I would go with like an elder law attorney for that. And
it's better to do it as early as possible so you don't run into the 5 year thing. Like if right? Like
because you hit that 5 years, it's you don't make it. Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah.
Is there any like other like big point that we didn't like really like say that because we've kind of hopped around, but like is there any other like?
No, I mean I think
that's about covered.
I mean,
you're thinking it's okay.
I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Kentucky is your only state that you're doing right now, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I just want to make sure for anybody who's like wanting to ask you more questions about this or. Like how what's your number, by the way? Like they can call for office wise if they want to talk to you about this. So.
Oh. Zach, are you going to put it on the bottom of the screen?
He can.
Call here. 606-471-2803.
471
2803.
2803. So in Kentucky, if you guys have anything like questions about this, like how to do estate planning or Medicaid planning, Derik is your guy. This is his like lane, and he can help you out. So don't hesitate to reach out to him. And anything else, Derik?
No, this
All right.
is fun. I enjoyed it.
Good times, right? And as always, we will end with our quote. And our quote today, once I get to it, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. And that is Benjamin Franklin. Thanks, Derik. And we'll see y'all the next time.